There we go.
All right. Let's see. I'm going to switch over. I'm getting some audio feedback here. That's why. No.
Go ahead. You went with the subtle headphones, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about getting a new pair myself. So
I like the others. I just put these on because I've started using some of these like when I'm doing podcasting on the go.
Yeah,
because they're easier to pack away. So, and they're pretty comfortable. So,
yep.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, and 1. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool.
And Sean, we've got a guest joining us shortly.
We do.
Here in about 5 minutes, he'll be coming on.
A very persuasive guest, too.
Yes. Yes.
In fact,
very persuasive.
You could say he's written the book on persuasion, or a book on persuasion.
A book. Yes. A book.
A book. Yeah. And then we will be talking about this. And it's one both of us have had around for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally the pages on mine are a little bit yellowed. So I've had this for a while. I don't know how old the book is. So it was kind of cool going back through it and seeing like my old highlights, my old tabs and marks and dog ears and things like that. So we'll be talking to James Speakman.
Yes.
And he's got some other cool stuff he's up to as well that we'll touch on.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
well, he's on the line, so we're just going to bring him on because
all right.
I'm not sure if he's got a beverage or not, but he's going to join us. I think he does. I see him shaking his head in the green room like he's got a beverage.
It's like, hurry up. I want to crack this thing open.
How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for coming on today, man. We were just talking about you. Wasn't sure you would have a Friday afternoon. I'm not sure what time zone are you in right now?
Eastern time zone.
Oh, okay. So it's almost beer time or beverage time for you.
Almost
in your neck of the woods. So, thanks for coming on today. We want to get into your book, Covert Persuasion, and a few other things that you're working on. By the way, I don't know if you're responsible for the Patriot software ads, but I used to listen to those on XM. When I hear those are really memorable. So we'll have to talk about those as well.
You can definitely touch on that as well. That's a phenomenal company. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I guess. I mean, I gotta think that those, as long as those ads have run, it's gotta be successful. They've got to be effective.
And they do a lot of other things too. And I'm relatively new to that company, but I can fill you in on what they do.
Sure.
And how persuasion leaks into their efforts too. So it's
absolutely.
That's cool. It looks like you're joining us from the book cave.
I got to tell you, with work from home, which is, the entire Patriot company is working from home, as most of the country is. And this background, it's kind of funny because I don't know if I can, maybe I can show you a little bit more.
That is quite the book. Look at you.
Much more all the way down here. And then the table that I'm standing at is a table that has books underneath.
Wow.
And then I've got some over there too, which, it's just the crazy side of me that gets shown off whenever there's a Zoom meeting or anything like that, where people are saying, okay, now, is that background real? And I can touch these books and pull them off. And we put all these, we moved into this house not too long ago, and I've got twin 8-year-old girls, and as they saw this thing start to take shape, they're like, you haven't read all these. Have you read all these? I'm like, yes, I have. And I said, we can get into it later, but I've learned to photo read.
Yeah.
Go through books extremely quick. I can pull a lot out of them very fast. And so they would occasionally quiz me, and they're 8, so the questions are pretty easy. But basically I said, pull one of these off, fan through it, and you'll see that if it's one of the really good ones, it's going to have highlights in it, marks in it, notes in the margin, all of that.
Absolutely.
Kind of.
Yeah.
See, I've got your book here, and I've got it dog-eared, underlined. I've got highlights. I mean, we've worn this thing out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that has been, or was, I guess I should say, a huge effort that I didn't, I'd never done one previously. I can get into how I met Kevin Hogan. That's an interesting story too. But it's one of those things where I have been accumulating things for a very long time, reading a ton, trying things in person to see, does this really work? Because I am very skeptical of everyone's claim of do this and you get instant compliance and do this. Yeah, well, you know, I would test almost everything out. And so years of that went by, and one thing led to another, and this became a reality. But we can get into that as you want to.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some pints first, and then we'll jump into the persuasion part of the show. So, so today we usually let our guests go first. So, Jim, if you've got a beverage, whatever it is.
Well, you know, I do, and I got to tell you, because I saw the interview you did with Doberman Dan, and I kind of am on the same track as him. I'm not a huge beer drinker, but there's one that I do like, and it's seasonal, and it's not out yet. I mean, I have a regular Bud Light here, which is no big deal. In fact, I had to go search through the refrigerator to find that, because well, luckily I had one, so I have one here. But there's one that I like. It's called Great Lakes Christmas Ale.
Okay.
Have you guys ever had that?
I have not had that one.
I'm not.
It only comes out like
it's seasonal,
October, and it sells out all the time everywhere. It's something to look forward to. Also, I think if they had it out all the time, I wouldn't think it's that special. So there's a little scarcity involved there, you know, and all these little things play in. But that one I'm looking forward to coming out, but I don't have that yet. So I've got the regular old standby Bud Light. Sounds
good. Well, yes, Shiner here in Texas, I'm in Austin, has a Christmas ale that's really good. I think we did that one last year, or I did that one last year. That's kind of the cool thing. Like, you know, depending on where our guests are from, you know, there's the craft breweries that are only in that region. Jonathan's in Knoxville. I'm in Texas. So, but I've signed up for the Original Craft Beer Club, which is our sponsor. And so every month I get 4 new beers, 3 of each, 4 new beers from who knows where. So I'll be featuring one of those today. So I've got from the good old, so that's the Original Craft Beer Club. What's really cool is I just signed up, and in the first case, they sent all kinds of like goodies, you know, because I signed up for the subscription plan. So I got like these really cool like Huggies, you know, koozies, whatever you call them, where you, depending on the part of the country you're in, with all the like memes on them. So that alone's worth the first subscription right there.
Very cool.
And then they send you these newsletters that tell you about the beer, about the brewery, and then they also have trivia on them. So kind of a cool package that you get every year. So I'm going to be talking today. I'm having the Dragonfly IPA. So here's the bottle.
There you go.
And it is so here's
you started with the worst to get that over with.
Well, we'll find out. Yeah, we'll find out. So it says so the Dragonfly IPA, it's 6.7% alcohol by volume. Upland, so the brewery is Upland Brewing Company from Bloomington, Indiana. So Upland's Dragonfly IPA is true to the classic style of this ale. Not a good start for me, but featuring 7 hop additions to create a powerful hop profile. Going downhill fast for me. Yes. I'm more of a stout guy, porter guy, but anyway, a solid malt base, however, tempers the bitter American hops, giving Dragonfly IPA a balance not often found in this style. So there is hope. And the end product is a well-balanced malty beer with a crisp taste of hops and an exceptionally floral nose. Dragonfly is Upland's most popular beer, serving as an introduction to craft beer for many and long-standing favorite for many more. So that's what I've got today. So I'm going to crack that open, Jonathan, while you tell us what you've got.
Okay, I have an Untitled Art malted milk stout.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
Yeah.
As I pour my IPA.
Yes, your IPA and against my my milk stout. I couldn't find a whole lot about this. I looked it up online, but it is 8% ABV. I don't know too much about the brewer that does this, so I guess I'm just going to have to judge it by taste alone on this one.
Yeah. No copy to persuade you.
So
dissuade
Jim,
you.
you've got did you say you had was it a Bud Light?
Yeah, it's a Bud Light Lime. I'm waiting for that Great Lakes Christmas sale to come out, because that is the one that, I mean, everybody around here, the restaurants get it, sell out of it quickly. The grocery stores get it, sell out of it quickly. When you see it, you buy the whole case. You don't just,
Oh, sure.
Sick. Yeah, you may not get another one. So it's really, really popular around here. Very good. So looking forward to that.
All right, quick trivia real quick, Jonathan. Since you've got a dark beer and I've got a lighter beer and Jim's got a super light beer.
Very dark.
So do darker beers have higher alcohol content than lighter beers?
I would say, what do you think, Jim? I would say no.
I would say yes.
Okay.
Really? Okay. Not always, but
although many people assume that darker beers have a higher alcohol content than lighter beers, the truth is that a beer's color has nothing to do with its strength. The color of a beer depends on the type of grain it was made from. The alcohol content is determined by the amount of grain. So the sugars in the starch, the grain, convert to alcohol during fermentation, and thus the more grain, the higher the final alcohol content will be. So there's your
I wanted to say dark, but I thought, I'm going to play devil's advocate and go against that, because it's always the opposite answer that you think is
right. Because the way the question's framed. So that's the way you took tests in school, right?
Exactly. This is too easy, but so I'm going to go opposite.
Yeah. Sort of like coffee, because coffee, the darker the brew, you'd think it has more caffeine in it. Not true.
Right.
The light roast has more caffeine in it. So it's a little bit counterintuitive. That's true.
Yeah, it has more flavor, but less caffeine than the darker typically. Right. So, all right, well, let's give it a taste. So cheers, everybody.
Wow.
That tastes like a basket of flowers.
So is Bud Light, is that kind of you said that's kind of just an every now and then you'll get something like that. So it's nothing special for you.
Yeah, it's not the go-to thing. Usually it's more like red wine with dinner. That's kind of what I enjoy more.
What particular blend or type of wine do you lean towards? Reds, whites, and then what within that? What do you like?
Reds. Reds almost all the time, and then it's usually Merlot is the red that I like. It's a little drier, but not always. I mean, some of the blends are good, so I'm not particular. So some of the blends are a little smoother and nicer, but usually the Merlot is the go-to. Yep.
Yeah.
Do you like these new bourbon barrel blends?
I've had one. I can't remember the label of that, and I didn't know what to expect, and I kind of liked it. It was kind of a good mix. It wasn't something that I would think that I would mix together. Going along that counterintuitive line, it's something that's a strange combination. So, but it wasn't bad. Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny how those different flavors, they seem really weird when you hear them. You see these on like the cooking shows and, like when I make grilled cheese sandwiches now, I always put like some type of fruit on it when I do the grilled cheese sandwich, because it fry the fruit up a little bit, lets some of the sugars out.
Oh yeah.
It's nice. Like a slice of apple or something like that. It's really good. So, So Jonathan, real quick, your rating out of 5 pints. What do you think?
I got to give this one about a 1.8. Just not a fan. A little way too sweet for me.
Oh, okay.
Way too sweet. So I just
more of a liqueur almost. Going down that road. Yeah. Some of those dark ones are like that, man. They just get syrupy sweet.
Yeah. Maybe during the colder months it would be ideal, but it's just not something you want, during a hot summer when it's 90 to 100 degrees outside.
Yeah. Coming off a workout. Yeah.
Right.
So I'm going to give mine like a 2.5.
Okay.
Probably if you like IPAs, it'd be higher, but I just can't get past that like really floral taste on the IPAs. I will say it's not bitter.
Yep.
It's smooth finish, but it's just got that punch in your nose and throat and face of that floral. I just don't love. So
yeah,
but it's all right. Fall is coming.
Let me ask you something about when you guys do this.
Yeah.
Do you now have to finish it? Because if it's both of you don't like it, so I'm thinking, do you have to just you have to down that whole thing, you have to finish it, and then only then can you have anything else, water, anything else. So you must finish that. Okay.
Yeah.
Must.
Yeah.
That's the rule.
And here's the thing. Sometimes the beer starts off bad, but it can get,
it gets better.
Once it airs out, it actually can get a little better but the initial, that initial sip is what we judge it off of. But, beers have been known to get better over time once they air out a little, but,
especially like the peanut butter stouts, those they really need some time to breathe, kind of like a red wine.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these beers the same way. And also, as we learned in our trivia last week, sometimes they're too cold and the flavors aren't released until they get up to about, what do we say, 45 to 55 degrees. Again, a lot like wine.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So what do you give your old microbrew Bud Light line there?
Is there a reason to rate that? I mean, there's really no reason to do that. But it's right in the middle, I guess. I mean, it's certainly not something that you would go, wow, I need more of that. But
I'd probably prefer that over. I'd probably prefer that over an IPA right now. So,
well, there you go. Yep.
So yeah, good old lager. It's hard to go wrong with a good lager. So
that's right.
All right. Well, that's our beer segment. So
let me introduce Jim to our audience for those who may be just coming on to the show. So Jim, and I want to say you go by, I know your book says James, but you typically go by Jim, correct?
Correct. Yep. Jim is fine. Yep.
Okay. So we've got Jim Speakman. He is the co-author of a book that Sean and I have had for a number of years called Covert Persuasion. Jim has over 2 decades of experience in advertising, and he is also the VP of marketing at Patriot Software. We'll be talking a little bit about that because, as I was mentioning at the beginning, they do some really clever stuff in their marketing. But you've got an extensive background in persuasion to advance products and services with a number of businesses. So you've been doing this for years. And Jim, it's a pleasure to have you on. We got to give you some advance applause.
Yeah, there you go. I can be done now. Thank you very much. I'll see you later.
Right.
Clapping. Yes.
It is live canned applause. Live canned applause.
The best kind. Always reliable. Yes.
So yeah, just to start out, tell us a little bit before we get into the book. Why don't you give us a little background of yourself,
sure.
Kind of your history, give our listeners a little background of because I know this book's probably 15 years old, right?
Yeah.
It goes back about 15 years.
2006. So it's been a few years, and just to give you an overall snapshot of kind of why that even came to be. Forget what its content is at the moment, but why it even happened. It goes back really to my dad. Mm-hmm. My dad was vice president of sales for a company for 43 years. And that's unheard of now because most people hop around. I'm an example of somebody who hopped around a little bit. But I remember growing up, my dad would have all those tapes in his car, Zig Ziglar, all the ones that are like, Power of Selling, Tom Hopkins, all these different, and every time we'd go somewhere, those would be on. There'd be no radio on. I'm like, Dad, this is dumb. This is boring. I don't want to hear this.
Right.
But he would go, no, you want to hear this. This is good stuff. And he would constantly put stuff in his mind that would make him better at what he did. And his whole career was that. So we had that constantly. Then fast forward a little bit of time, and I go through this phase where I think books are decorations and I don't want to read any of them. So that was through part of school. And then my mom was always an avid reader. Just there were books all over the house. Not books that I would necessarily read, but they were a fixture of the house. Yeah. Still no interest. All through high school, only read things if I was forced to. Didn't like it one bit. College, of course, you have to read a lot. And then I'm starting to get curious about that age, about why are people making these choices? Just all kinds of things. What car you buy, what clothes you wear, what place you go, what you're interested in, because that was a big thing. Everybody's trying to figure out, what am I going to major in? Yeah. How do you know, what's for lack of a better word, what's persuading you to choose a path? Like, how are you deciding? So that's really when things started to pick up of, how are people making decisions? What is it? What is there something somebody could say that could sway you? Because people would look around like, what are you going to major in? I don't know. What are you majoring in? Like, they want to hear the answers so that they can decide what they're going to major. It's so bizarre. So through college, then I struggled to read as much as I could and retain as much. And that was never very easy for me. Graduate, get into my first job. By the way, my major was in advertising. So Marketing 402, Martha Rogers, Bowling Green State University. She was phenomenally good. To this day, I can remember the senior project of what we did. And she said, this is 80% of your grade. And
wow.
We were like mock ad agencies. So she split up the class into groups, and we had to pitch a product. She brought in some local business people, and they were deciding, whose was the best. But I can still remember in the prep for that, she would say, if I can say so what to whatever it is you say, you fail.
That's great.
So that so what test has been in my head forever. So if somebody says, you say something that you think is just fantastic, and they go, so what? Even if they don't say it out loud, their body's going to tell you, because if you listen and pay attention, you're going to see a shoulder shrug, you're going to see a sigh, you're going to see something.
Yeah.
So fast forward from that, after college, my first job is in radio. I'm selling radio advertising for the 800-pound gorilla AM/FM combo in our market. And I'm thinking, advertising, this is the greatest thing. Little lessons along the way. Like, it was a big station, but it was small enough that as the account executive, I'm convincing the car dealer that he should absolutely advertise, and he doesn't want to. He thinks the radio doesn't work. I'm like, okay. So I tell my sales manager, I say, you know what? I'm getting all this feedback. Radio doesn't work. And he goes, tell you what. He goes, why don't you do this? Why don't you give it away for free? And I said, well, I can't do that. I can't give it away for free. And he goes, no, trust me. Go down to the dealership and tell them we're gonna just give you a free commercial. And I said, well, clue me in before I go down there and do this, because I'm gonna feel like an idiot. And he goes, here's what you do. So he gave me the story. I go down to the dealership. I talk to the dealership owner, and I say, look, I know you're not a fan of radio. I know you think it doesn't work, but we're going to give you a free one. But we're going to write it, and we're going to control everything that it says. And we're going to say that, the next 40 people who get to the dealership are going to get a key to one of the cars in this showroom. And one of the keys is going to start the car. And, we're going to give away a car. And he said, I can't do that. And I said, well, why not? We're going to just air a radio ad. No one listens to that, right? And he goes, oh, no, people listen. I can't give away a car. Okay. This is one of my twin daughters who's asking me a question about absolutely can't wait. All right, I'll help you in a minute, honey. Okay. So the joys of working at home, right?
Oh, yeah. Great.
We go past that dealership saying, I can't do that, realizing the value of radio. That makes me more curious. And as I write more radio ads, the radio scripts that I wrote, and I wrote thousands of them, I started to realize a little bit of human behavior in that. And this is, I'm fresh out of college. If I write the radio script and I take it to a business owner, I started to do something very specific. I would make a mistake on their phone number, because the call to action at the end was always call 1-800 whatever.
Right.
And I would make a mistake there. And I did that on purpose so they could look at this thing and they could go, oh, well, you got this wrong. And they would correct it. I'm like, okay, Is it okay now? Well, yeah, now it's okay. Perfect. So I got more yeses from that one technique than I thought, well, that can't be that easy. So then I started to play with all the other things I started to hear about. And that started to get me curious about, what are the things that persuade people? I mean, is there something else that I could do? So then I had this fairly long history in direct response marketing. And some of the names that I've been trained by directly knew Gary Halbert, and they were trained by him. Trained is a strong word. They knew him because you guys know. But anyway, they knew him. I started to get into the company, and I started as a script writer in the call center. And so they said, hey, you've got a flare. You seem to be able to convert interest into a sale. Your scripts are working better than anything we've ever had. We think you might be able to write, they called it front end copy. And at that time it was full page advertorial newspaper. Primarily. And very complicated 6 to 9 way name match direct mail. I'm like, okay, well, I'll definitely give that a shot. And I said it that casually. I'm like, I'll give that a shot. And one of the guys said, there were 2 people, the owner of the company and his creative, I would say, business partner, creative genius. The 2 of them together were like a brain that you couldn't believe. They couldn't really do it separately, but when they wrote together, they would argue like you couldn't believe. Argue over the meaning of one word. Crazy stories I have. So they said, well, they said, you can't just try this. You know, if you have an interest, we'll train you. You don't just, we're not going to put you in a room and say, write something. You're so far away from writing something, you have no idea. So they trained me for a very long time. And they started with direct mail copy. And John, who was one of the guys who trained me, said I would write some stuff down. Finally, I'd get this package started, right? And I would think it's pretty good. And so I'm thinking, okay, this is really, we all think it's pretty good, right? You fall in love with your own copy, you know, and you protect it too. So I walk in and I hand it to him and he's starting to read it at his desk. And I said, well, what I mean there is, and he screamed at me and he said, I can't tell you what he said, but he screamed at me. And I said, what is that? And he goes, are you going to be at Martha and Bill's kitchen table when they're reading this? You can't speak for your copy. It's got to do all the speaking for your copy without you being there. He says, I almost didn't let you stay in the room while I read it. Because then he gets out his red pen. He empties the red pen. He goes, these are poison words. These are this. These are, and I have all that training to this day. I kept every note that I ever made with him. With that company, and you're going to recognize the company as soon as I say what the products were. I joined that company when it had 50 employees and it had about $50 million in revenue. Advanced in the company to become chief of staff. So I was second to the CEO and owner, went over all the executives there. That was another story. Love those guys. They're fantastic. We got it up to 1,350 employees and about $350 million.
Wow.
Now it's a shell of its former self. All the executives have left. The owner is gone. The company shrunk down to, I don't even know. I'm not even sure. I know it's around, but I'm not sure what it's doing. But the products, you'll remember the Amish built fireplace.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That was one of the products. We had a monetary division, we had the home products division, and then we had like a health, weight loss, and joint relief division. So those 3 areas. We were on TV infomercials. We did direct mail in the millions. We did 600 newspapers in the span of 3 weeks when we did a rollout. All kinds of, you name it, we did it. So that was one set of experience. And if you had a multi-hour podcast, I would be able to tell you stories that I probably shouldn't. And it would probably take a few more of those things you have in your hand right there, Sean, to get me to tell you those things.
I remember those old advertorials of the Amish in like papers like USA Today so I mean those are really famous.
I tried to do a spec assignment. When I first got into copy, I found out about it through AWAI, and they have a job fair every year. So back in like 2005, 2006, which is probably still the heyday of that company, they had a booth at that job fair, and I remember them, all the USA Today pages laid out and all this kind of stuff. And I never did get a job there, so I obviously still too new in my craft.
Sure.
But yeah, I always love those articles to this day. I mean, those advertorials, and they did some money. Did they do like the silver coins and coin stuff too? Or
Yeah, we did presidential coins, state quarters. We did uncut sheets of real currency, like $4 bills still connected, 5s, 10s, like sheets of $4 bills still connected, bigger sheets too. We had a vault that had multiple millions of dollars in coin and currency on the property. That was an interesting thing because here's one little side story. When the first presidential coin came out, the U.S. Mint obviously makes the coins. I was in contact with someone at the U.S. Mint, and I said, hey, we're very interested in getting our hands on these first. Where are you going to show them off first? I said, Chicago Federal Building. I'm like, okay, great. So we got a group together. I got one of our staff photographers. I got a couple people with me. We took this 46-foot all black motor coach titled to the World Reserve Monetary Exchange, which was the name of that division. Drove that to downtown Chicago. And we had I don't remember that detail, so I won't say it, but we drove it to downtown Chicago, Federal Building. As soon as we pulled up, the police had some, it just so happened, had some spaces blocked off directly in front of the Federal Building. As soon as we pulled up, I got out and I looked at the policeman who was directing some traffic and I said, we need to park right here. And he looks at us and he goes, okay, no problem. Lets us park there. I thought, there's no way that works.
Mm-hmm.
There's these little things where if you just say it with authority, with, just a calm confidence,
yeah,
hey, look, I need to park here. I didn't give him any reason. And there's that Loftus study in the book, actually, about people in line at a copier.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because I need to make copies.
Yeah.
Because, and speaking of my 8-year-old daughters, they'll say, why? To an incessant degree. Why? And I find myself saying what those studies all proved, which is we are trained and brought up that because I said so is enough of an answer.
Yeah.
And if all you do is put because, I felt like at that time, and I was way deep into all of this stuff at that point, and I'm thinking, I'm going to say, because I see him and I see us kind of caught in traffic and I see my opportunity for the open spaces that would definitely fit this bus. I'm like, I'm going to say I need to park here because we need to park here. And I thought, it sounds so stupid. I can't bring myself to say that. So all I did was I said, we need to park right here. And then I stopped talking. He was like, okay. I'm like, so the little slices of things that happen along the way just make me think this stuff is amazing. So then anyway, that was the direct response company. I then advanced to, or moved on to the local newspaper, Canton Repository. They actually own 3 dailies, owned by Gannett, since bought by USA Today. I was ad director there, had 20 or 30 sales reps, all selling different things and literally making up prices. If you think prices in newspapers are like, here's our rate card, we'll just shred that. It makes no difference. So,
yeah.
And all of the stuff, all the media that we would buy at the direct response company was all remnant, all of it. So we got rates that you wouldn't believe. USA Today rates that probably not very many other people ever got. But we were also in there consistently, so they could count on us. Their page cost was way lower than their stated rate card, obviously. So I'm at the newspaper. I am then, they said, we need a rate increase. I'm like, what does that even mean? So I made up a new rate card that none of us followed. So anyway, I moved on from there to a company that does, works with financial advisors across the country. So the financial advisors across the country are trying to persuade people to go to a seminar, learn the information, set an appointment, meet with the advisor, follow the process through to completed sales of either annuities or IULs or something like that.
Yep.
Matter of fact, I have 10 of these notebooks. These are just, I use these all the time. This is like book 9. I have 10 of these things that I fill up with all the kinds of things that I will just.
Wow, look at that. That's pretty that's pretty detailed. I wish I wrote that clean and clear. That's
really
that's pretty amazing.
Direct mail product ideas, all kinds of stuff. So
that's cool.
And in the beginning of these, I'd actually have a table of contents that I would write down, where do I find those things? So that's how crazy note taking, that's how my brain works. So
yeah,
back up before all my positions, so to speak, I did learn one thing that makes this room a reality, which is how to photo read. I've gone through various things that try to attempt to tell you that you can read faster and you can retain it all.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing ever worked for me except photo reading. And
are you talking about like the actual name brand photo reading? That's
Paul Sheely's. Yeah.
I've got it right back here on the.
Yep. I went to a Holiday Inn in, I think maybe Columbus or something. I'm in Canton, where the Pro Football Hall of Fame is.
Yeah.
And I spent like 2 days learning that for 8 hours a day. That made a huge difference. I use it all the time too, obviously. So I can.
So how fast can you get through a book then? Give us an idea.
Well, it's because here,
your standard,
believe it or not,
a book like that.
And this is all tabbed up too, and I wrote this. So that's weird, but it is old enough now that I'll reference it back again. But if this book was brand new to me, it's 222 pages or so, I would be able to read that in about 40 minutes.
Okay.
And that's doing a couple passes, right? You do the
yeah. And that would.
I know this isn't the topic, but like, what was it? You set the intention, and then you go hit some of the high point, or there's like 3 or 4 steps, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, the 5, and those 5 are. And it's funny because one of the things you'll do is it's how your eyes read text, right? So you may think, and you've seen those paragraphs of text, I'm sure, where what they do is they leave the first and last letter of each word in place, and they mix up all the middle letters of the word.
Yeah.
And if every word is done like that, you can read it perfectly.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is. We don't understand how our brains do this. And all I can tell you is that once you sort of figure out how all that works, you can go so much faster if you just trust yourself that you're getting it.
Yeah.
And do all 5 steps. If you just do the first one is you flip the pages at like 1 per second. And if that's all you do, then you're just flipping pages. It's not going to work. And that's what I think most people think it is. If they see me do it, they'll be like, "Are you done?" No. I mean, it's a process where you can't be distracted by anything else. You're focused solely on this. You can go through it. And in about 40 minutes, I would get about 75% of that content. And if I wanted to like teach out of the book, I'd do another 40, 45 minutes. So in an hour to an hour and a half, I would have that book down enough that you would be able to ask me decent, in-depth questions about it. The only thing that doesn't work for me is if it's a novel. If it's like a story, it needs to be structured like a business book, because that matters.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the recall is much higher than if you just read it. You know, like you can get through an audiobook, average audiobook, 6 hours for most business books. You play it at 1.5, 2 times speed. You can get through it in 3 hours, but you don't remember much of it. Like you remember some big highlights, but that's it.
Right.
So it probably triggers ideas more than it does you remember anything.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and you have to. The intention is a good word, although it's not one of the 5 steps that is in this system. But that intention is everything, and that goes to, like in my book, it's outcome-based thinking, right? It's what do you want to get out of it? And I think that is what is missing in almost every normal attempt. Either whether we're talking about photo reading or trying to persuade somebody.
Yeah.
They're trying to persuade somebody. People are so interesting to me, that life is an experiment.
Yeah.
I can go to a restaurant and have a blast with somebody trying to figure out how can I get this kind of outcome. My girls are excellent at not only being the experiment, but also they're picking up on so much of this stuff too.
Oh yeah.
They're giving it back to me pretty good. I'm like,
I wish kids have picked up on the fake because.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So they like that fake because all the time, and it works.
Yeah. Well, and you're the son of a salesman. I'm the son of a salesman. We're both, Jonathan, I don't know what your dad did, but
salesman.
So it's super. I think that idea of persuasion and sales and marketing is very like catchy. It's very, I know a lot of other people have same careers as their parents, but there's something I think about when you realize it's about persuading humans and you see how big of a, I mean, you say in the first line of your book or the second line of your book, I think, or one of the early call out boxes, I guess. Yeah. Everything you know or have ever will have become or do experience, you will get with and through other people.
Yeah.
And then you say life is persuasion.
Yes.
And like that line, that idea that life is persuasion is something, as a copywriter myself and a coach, like to me, like it's fascinating how you can use words to literally create new worlds for people. and radically change their lives. And that's all it is, actually. Like that's all, everything we have is just a creation of words that somebody's strung together. And, it's just crazy. I have a business called Agency 2610, and it's 26 letters, 10 numbers, right? In the English language.
Interesting.
Anything you want to accomplish in life requires some mixture of those 26 letters and 10 numbers.
Mm-hmm.
You can have anything you want.
That is so cool. And I love the fact that you said it's words, because there's stuff in this book that, I mean, I don't know where to go with that, because my brain firing on all cylinders here, because the words you use determine the feelings you feel.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Most people will object to that. You guys are way into this subject, so you'll agree with it quickly, but most people will go, no, they don't. They made me feel X, whatever. They made me feel upset. Well, that's not true at all. There's an inside persuasion game and there's an exterior one. If I'm trying to persuade other people, I have to have what's inside here straightened out. Mm-hmm. And I have to know what I want in the end, outcome-based thinking again. But the inside game, the words I use to describe the event I experienced will change the feeling I get if I change the words I use.
Yeah.
So, and I'll tell, you can go back to Tony Robbins' transformational vocabulary. Noam Chomsky had it before him, transformational grammar. Everybody repackages the same stuff. It's just, can you use it to literally affect the way you feel in any given moment? And I think there's two things that happen. If something you experience upsets you, you're going to knee-jerk be upset. You're just going to be. You can't stop that. That quick reaction happens. Mm-hmm. So I let myself have that for a split second, literally just that quick. But then you have to ask, and there's so many models in all these books that say, well, what do you do next? You ask yourself questions. So there's like, why does this always happen to me? Well, does it always happen to you? Always? Forever? For all time, without exception? I mean, I've trained myself to ask these questions internally so that I can deflect that stuff and realize that, okay, that was one situation, one-off. It never happened before. It won't happen again, most likely. And what is it really doing? Why do I feel this way? Am I upset because I sort of agree with what happened and I'm disappointed in myself? Could I be challenged by it instead of upset by it? Could I be fascinated by it instead of angered? Could I use it somehow to propel me forward rather than use it to hurt somebody else? I mean, and all these questions fire so quickly in my head that I can start to quickly change my outlook. There's something that I constantly find myself drawing. It's in a lot of books, right? And I'm going to do it real quick here, and I'll just hold it up. I'm really good at stick figures, so that's what I'm going to do.
That's why I keep a whiteboard behind my desk.
Yeah, and I've got one in here. I've got two in here actually, but this kind of where's that? This kind of drawing right here, right? Yep. So this is the event that it's the event.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nobody sees the event for what it is. This person sees it through their filter.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
They can't see it any other way. And then this person sees it through their filter. They can't see it any other way. So and that's like a fundamental understanding of how to persuade somebody, right? Because they're coming from their own filters. They can't, like, when people say, well, that's as plain as day, that's what's true. I'm like, they're speaking a foreign language.
Yeah.
Well, this goes back to Stephen Covey's stuff, right? Seek first to understand and then be understood, right? If you don't understand the filter they're looking through, you'll never be able to persuade them effectively.
Right. And what do you think the best way is to try to get that understanding?
Ask questions.
For sure. It's all 100% about that. And the next, I would
add, ask questions that aren't leading questions. Because then you're putting your filter on top of their filter.
That's right. Asking questions to really understand, not to lead them in a certain direction.
Right. Because there are definitely different sets of questions, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a point where you can start leading, but in the beginning,
understand.
Yeah. You're seeking to learn.
Yeah.
Not like a trial lawyer trying to lead them down a certain path.
No, but I've got books on cross-examination right over there too. And I think if I told you, you know what those Sterilite containers are, the big clear plastic things with the lids? I've got 3 of those full of research on just questions.
Wow.
Because that's the next book that I've been writing. And I'm not on any timetable for it. I'm not in a hurry for it. And I'm doing it primarily for my daughters because they need to understand how to control themselves, how to make better decisions. And then once you've got that situated, how do you persuade somebody else? Because it's shockingly easy if you know certain things. Like this book has 55 tactics in it, right? I mean, there are more than 55. We took some out. And I still have all of those. Took some out. And some of those are good. Some of them are derivatives of the ones that are in there. But the ones that are in there and the ones that are in all these things right here, there's so many things that you can do to persuade somebody that it just makes life exciting. And everything you get or have or do or be, you get with and through other people. That is a fundamental thing. That's why it's in the front of that book.
Yeah, I think the other saying that's coming to mind right now is like the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you ask, both of yourself and of others.
Right.
So that's, like you said, if you can ask yourself those questions when something happens and rapid fire through them. I mean, Byron Katie's The Work, is focused on kind of reorienting yourself. I think that's why so much marketing and persuasion people also like personal development. Because once you understand that principle, you see that like that's just how people work. And you can't persuade unless you start understanding human psychology and what makes people tick and all that kind of stuff. So Jonathan, it looks like you're loaded for a question from the book. So let's transition to the book a little bit. And hit some of the big points or the big takeaways there. Because if you've not read this book, I will say this: if you've not read Covert Persuasion, one of the cool things is there's these $10,000, which with inflation, they're probably worth more than that now.
I'd say at least double.
Yeah, it's probably at $20,000 now. All these $10,000 ideas in here that you can apply and literally be worth, sending out an extra email or making an extra contact that is then worth, X amount of dollars. And I know, Jonathan, you do that all the time with your contacts. So, but what's your question?
I'm like pulling out like note cards out of that I've made notes, Jim.
From 15 years ago.
Awesome.
This is my detailed. It's not as fancy as your book, but no, I did want to highlight there's one chapter in this book that I want to make our listeners aware of, but it's the chapter on covert strategies for changing beliefs. What I find in that is fascinating because initially when I read it, it almost felt like it went against like commitment and consistency from Cialdini, because you talk about the guy that's choosing between the lady that's choosing between 2 guys. So immediately after she chooses guy A, she's the guy B, then both of these guys have all these different qualities and they all are great. So what comes to mind is like these shows, The Bachelor. So nowadays. And but as soon as this person chooses option A, option B automatically in their mind becomes valuable, right? Because they've made that commitment, but in the sense that they're still interested in option B over here. What comes to mind, when I initially read that, I'm thinking of Cialdini, and commit, in the principles of influence talks about commitment and consistency. Once you jump on board or once you make a decision, your actions are trying to make up or trying to be consistent with that decision. Right. So I'm just curious, that's kind of a new thing. I found that really interesting, but you talk about ways to overcome people having that. It's almost like a buyer's remorse type deal where people need to overcome that. So I don't know if that rings a bell to you, but I'd love to hear a little more on that.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things you said in there, and I'm biting my tongue to just.
No, you just want to jump on that.
I just want to jump in and talk about it. But Yeah, basically you're talking about option attachment, right? In the very beginning. Yep. So and I can go back to, we all have experiences like this, right? It doesn't even have to be complicated. It's like when I was a little kid, I had a paper route. And the paper route, I would get some money. I would definitely want to go buy the latest toy or whatever. And so I would take my money. My dad would take me to Kmart at the time. I would pick something out, right? Mm-hmm. But the picking out of something with my money took forever.
Oh, yeah.
If it's dad's money, get this and go, man. I want this one. I want the most expensive. But if it's my money, I'm thinking, okay, I'm picking between this. I remember it was a Tonka truck ambulance, and it was something out. I forget what it was. Some like bulldozer or something. Two trucks. So I'm trying to decide. And then the pain comes in because I'm thinking of both. I'm thinking of playing with both. Where am I going to play with them both? What do I like best? But then I'm also realizing once I spend the money's gone too. So I can't go back and get this one. I remember I picked the ambulance. I'm thinking this will be the one that I'll play with. As I'm checking out, I can still remember the feeling of, I think I want the bulldozer. And that's because option attachment. There's so many examples. Dating is absolutely one of those. Bachelor show, absolutely one of those. Because now you mentioned Robert Cialdini, and the commitment and consistency, you said it right, because once the decision is made is when commitment and consistency comes into play. So before the decision is made, the more time you take in making the decision makes the decision more difficult. So if you are choosing between two things that are fairly similar, you like them both, you think pick one and move on. It's sort of like, car dealership, all the options, the car, all that kind of stuff. You're thinking, okay, that's a long enough process. You kind of move along quickly enough that you don't regret the previous decisions. There's anticipated regret too, which is the future. But if you stick with deciding quicker, and as a salesperson, you want to make sure that that client decides quicker between you and the competitor. You can talk about the competitor, talk about them quickly, and then talk about how you've got a superior solution for them, so that there's no regret there. Because as soon as the decision's made, if there's no help and assistance from you to make that decision, from you, the persuader, then it's going to be like that dating situation. Oh, not does she just have some interest in the person she didn't pick? That person actually becomes more desirable now that they've not been picked. So that's a problem. And the only way to solve that is to rewind, go back to the decision process and help the decision happen quicker. When it happens quicker, then the decision's been made. Then commitment and consistency comes in, because then they want to be consistent with their previous commitments. They've made this commitment to this decision. Now they're going to find all the justifying things that support that. Like, when they tell their friends, or you can equip them that when they tell their friends, they can say, did you know this was rated by the whatever board as an A+ rating? Isn't that really cool? I chose smart. I'm smart. So you need to rebuild up that time when you have to inoculate them against all that anticipated regret. So commitment and consistency, it's not that it's different from that. I like how you were reading it thinking, I think it's different. It's timing. It's that decision is separate from what happens next. And commitment and consistency, it's rock solid. I mean, that just definitely happens.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. You can look at that. You can get into politics with that. People that make their decisions really quick on a certain particular candidate A, candidate B.
Yep.
Once they form their opinion quickly, it's pretty difficult. Then they start their foundational process of building all of the evidence as to why, once they formulate that. But I think, the people that we're always talking about when it comes to election season are those people not on this side or this side. It's the people that are these undecideds, like this 5 or 6% that are like always at the last minute, like, what are we going to do? And these are the people that can go either way. Right?
The funny thing is, I don't think those people are undecided.
Well, yeah, it's becoming less and less.
Yeah, well, the slice of those folks is very, very thin, especially, as the years go on here. But I think in their heart of hearts, I think they've chosen somebody, and they're looking for justification to prove themselves that, even if they don't share that decision, that's something that they're looking for. Like, they're leaning one way or another, believe me. And the people who are on one side or the other,
Yep.
They don't just look for facts that justify, they ignore facts that compete.
Right.
For sure. And they ignore all evidence to the contrary, as Kevin would say in this book. So it's so interesting how we're wired as people. And because we can predict that, it becomes easier to persuade people.
Yeah.
You can predict how they're going to think. None of this is a surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So keeping in this same kind of this idea of getting people to make decisions quicker, what are some of the covert strategies? What's one of the kind of the top ones to help facilitate that quicker decision making? Because I know that's a problem for a lot of people.
Yeah. And
there's so many options these days. Like it's easy to get overwhelmed.
That's true. I mean, in anything.
And good options. It's not like it's
right.
I mean, there's a lot of good options. You go to the grocery store, you go to the car lot. Like there's really not a lot of really poorly made cars anymore. Like there's some that are better than others, but they all are better than they were 20 years ago. So like, how do you help people through that decision-making process when I think it's harder than ever to make those decisions?
Well, and the funny thing is, not only do you have a lot of good options, you also have like an incredible amount of information at your fingertips. If you're thinking of buying something, where do you go? You go to Google and you find out all you can. And you are as well equipped as the salesperson is usually, if there is a salesperson involved. So there isn't that big advantage of like heavy information. I know a secret I'm going to tell you. It's going to make your decision very clear, and you're going to choose this one over this one. Those days are gone because you can just quickly Google and get 500 reviews on what people who already made that decision thought. So you're way ahead. There's also there's a book called Paradox of Choice. I don't know if you guys have read that one. I think it's Barry Schwartz. My eyes aren't good enough to see it across the room, but I'm looking at it.
I've heard about it. I haven't read it, but I've heard that title a number of times.
Check out his YouTube videos. I mean, the amount of psychology of choice that's in that book is incredible, because he nails exactly how we all think about deciding things and what annoys us and what makes the choice easy or hard. Okay, with that aside, back to what in this book would help, what would be my go-to? I'd probably do the behavioral imaging scripts, is what it's called in the book. I call it a bunch of things, but really what it is taking that person who you're talking to and saying, okay, look, and admit all the things that are absolutely true, because long ago are gone the days of BS trying to trick somebody into deciding something.
Right.
And that's also in this book, because I didn't even want to put any of that in here. It seems kind of hypey to me, but it's sort of like, well, isn't this manipulation? Well, yeah, but it's ethical manipulation, right? Because I have a good outcome in mind. It's better for you. It's better for me. It's better for everybody. Just like I mentioned it in here, but like a hammer. A hammer's great for driving a nail, but it can be misused. You can hit somebody in the head with it. It's just a tool. So all these tools, they can be misused. You could take this book could be a political weapon that, or any influence book that is good, could be absolutely misused. But going back to how to make that decision happen faster, the way to make that happen faster is to, in just a couple of minutes, walk that person into the future. Walk them into the future. There's lots of things that happen when you do that. You're in control of that future perfect, I call it. So the future perfect with your product as the solution. Hey, look at this. When you make the decision, you're going to get immediate benefits of our toll-free service. You're going to get immediate this. You're going to have this go right for you. You're going to avoid all this downtime. You're going to have this happen, this happen. You're going to paint the perfect picture. And you're going to say, at the end of this, you're going to be so happy that you did this that you're going to even tell your friends and all of this stuff. Now rewind to the present. That's one future perfect. There's also a future terrible. So, I'm going to help you make the decision. And this is where it's really weird. The future terrible is, let's say you choose the competitor. I'll never say anything bad about any of my competitors ever, because there's no reason. They make a fine product.
Sure.
But let me tell you the difference. If you choose them, here's what's going to happen. You won't have this in the product. You'll have this instead. What does that do? In our experience, what that happens is this. You have more service calls. You have more this. This happens and this. I'm not going to say that's what's going to happen, but if it does, that's probably going to create some downtime in your company, and you're probably going to have this happen and this happen. And then you walk them back to the present. So good thing is, none of that has happened yet. You're at the time when you can make the best choice for you. So what do you say we go ahead with this one, or whatever it is? That's a little bit old technology there, but it helps them see what would be bad if they chose wrong, what would be good if they choose right, and do that in just a couple of minutes. You're taking control of their internal conversations and helping them along. Because if you leave it up to them, like if they say, hey, I want to think it over, you lost.
Yeah, that's the death for a salesperson. That's just like the phrase of death right there. Or that was a great presentation. That's you're dead there too. But
we'll let you know.
You talk in the book about people, they really remember like big experiences and they remember their past, but they're not very clear about their future. So it seems to me what you're doing is because they're not clear about their future, you're creating it for them.
Right.
So that's where you have the most ability to morph and create the future for them, because they don't actually have a clear vision of it.
Yeah, very few people are good at visualizing. Just think of buying a house. You go into the house, it's got ugly wallpaper, it's got whatever. That'll turn a lot of people off. Whereas some people walk in and say, oh no, we're going to strip this, move this wall. It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but they can see the future perfect.
Right.
It's the same kind of thing. And if you can walk them into a future perfect, you're in control of it. Because you're in control of it, everything goes smooth and right. It's easy. You're going to do a lot of the work for them. You can put all those phrases in there. And what you're really embedding in all of that is kind of a lot of things like pain and pleasure principle, right? So it's, people do more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure. So you want to show the pain path, show it's short and specifically wrong, and then show the future perfect path. And if you do that with enough detail, depending on what your product is, and obviously pointing out the sincerely authentic differences that make you clearly a better choice, you have to do it ethically, because if you're not the better choice, then that sale is going to get returned, blown up, get a bad reputation. Obviously you have to have a good product. All those things have to be true, but just helping them see the future is one of the most missed things ever.
Yeah. Well, what keeps coming to mind for me, and you, based on your library there, you've probably read it, but Nancy Duarte's books on presentations, and she takes apart like MLK's speech and JFK's speech, and that's what they're doing, right? They're showing this picture of what it is, and they come back to where you are, and then they show this picture of what it could be and where you are, and it bounces back and forth. And then they use, nostalgic phrases and things like this that create that new future that is so much better than the current reality that you don't have any choice but to want to pick that.
Right. And the phrase "to want to pick that" is perfect. Yeah. It's aspirational. You want it. Now, politics is different and weird, because when you deconstruct political speeches, what you find is zero substance for the most part. What they're doing is just platitudes and nice feeling words that everybody in the crowd assigns their own meaning to.
Yep.
Don't you want to make the future brighter for your kids? Well, yeah, I want that. You want that? Yeah, I want that. Let's elect this guy. There's no substance. Where's brighter mean? Really, Trey Gowdy just released a book. I just got it the other day, and I haven't had a chance to read it. I'll probably read it tonight. But he talks about the power of questions, which is why I got it, because the book is called
he's a former attorney, or no, he was a district attorney, right?
Right. He was a prosecuting attorney, and he was in Congress for years. His ability to question, I am fascinated by, because what he'll do is listen very hard to what you say, and then make you define the words you just used in a way that absolutely proves his point. And you're going to do it for him. It's so smooth. It's so good. And back to, getting them to want to do it in a sales situation with your product or service. That's more genuine to me, painting that nice future perfect picture, because you're talking about some specific actual real benefit they're going to get. Whereas in a political speech, you're talking about feel good, crowd thought contagions. These virtual things for politicians right now are a death blow.
Yeah,
I don't care what party you're on, because
they're really bad.
The crowd is a participant. The crowd thought contagion, because, and you know what I'm talking about. As soon as the candidate comes up, and he just doesn't come up first, you got some warm-ups, you got some people getting the crowd pumped up. As soon as that candidate comes out, it's like a concert, and everybody is just pro the candidate. And it doesn't matter, you know, say, I love to be in Texas. Yeah, everybody's, you know, what is that?
Yeah,
you're rooting for where you live. That's fantastic, but it's so different of an atmosphere.
It is.
Those,
because a lot of that's priming. They're priming you for it.
For sure.
It's like going to, you know, it's like you go into one of these big live events where the first thing they do is when the main speaker comes out on stage, you know, they got the crowd. I mean, they got the music jacked up and people are jumping, and they're ready to go. By the time he comes out, it's like people are primed. But you're exactly right in this virtual stuff that you just can't get that, and it's just dead.
Well, I mean, then there's literally the physical energy of other human beings being close to each other. You know, those rooms are usually packed.
Yeah.
Right now, everything's social distance, but like, you know, and I think that's one reason like belly to belly sales is still superior to any other form, because I mean, you got the body language and all that. You can see some of that on Zoom and things like that, but you lose that energy, like the literal energy field that, you know, is now proven by science. You know, before it was theory. I mean, Zig Ziglar, you talked about that at the top of the show, right? He's like, it's a transfer of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
You know, that's what sales is, right? But
and this artificial thing right here,
you can't feel it.
No,
you can sort of feel it, but not as much.
You need some music.
Okay. Yeah, music would help. But and that you can transfer it from politics, right, to online learning for kids.
Yeah.
Because politics is persuasion. Teaching is persuasion. Teaching
absolutely.
It's a question-based persuasion model. And all of that is just so affected by this right here that it's really just hurting everything. And now more than ever, I think people do need to learn the tools of persuasion, because a lot of the ability to do it has been taken away.
Yeah.
And so you have to learn how to communicate more clearly, how to question things, how to get people to think with you and move along your path.
And even how to create the crowd effect. Like I know when I do webinars or trainings online, like I really stoke the chat, right? Because you can start to get that crowd mentality if you ask the right questions in the chat and get people to participate in the chat. And it feels a little cheesy, but it just flat out works. Like,
absolutely.
You know, like you get people to talk about where they're from, you know, that first question, where are you tuning in from, or like whatever. And you make a big deal out of where they're from. And then you start asking the yes questions or other, you know, questions, or, hey, give me a feedback. Are you liking this? And they're like, yeah, love it. Yeah.
Yep.
And it builds on itself. And, you know, so you have to understand that matters, or else you forget, you leave it out, and then you wonder why your sales are flat.
Right. All of those things matter. And when some of the elements are taken away, it just makes it's like losing one of your senses, right? You lose one of those, the story is, thankfully I haven't lost any of mine, so I don't know firsthand, but your others are heightened. So if you lose this person-to-person contact temporarily, you've got to invest in yourself to learn how to make what you have left work better.
Right.
So what are the phrases? What are the words? Words matter. Are you saying the right thing? Are you getting them to think along with you? And if you're not, you just might as well, you know, close out the Zoom window there and be done. You need to be able to reach through that almost and say, hey, let's walk through this together and get them going. So,
all right. So 2 things real quick. So I'm trying to think of a book that maybe you haven't read. So, which is going to be tough, but have you done the Brilliance? Have you done the Brilliance Breakthrough with Eugene Schwartz? So there's Breakthrough Advertising, but his other less known book is The Brilliance Breakthrough,
and much more expensive.
And back at the direct response days, I had to leave the Breakthrough one. That was one of the company's books, and it stayed when I left, so I didn't have it anymore. And I recently looked that up and can't find it.
Brian Kurtz, who's been on our show, and he's a friend of mine. He worked for Boardroom for a long time.
I just talked to Brian the other day on a Zoom call. As a matter of fact,
really,
yeah.
Wow. So he's got the rights to both those books, both the Breakthrough Advertising and the Brilliance Breakthrough. What you're talking about with the power of words. So the Brilliance Breakthrough actually comes with a workbook that, in true Schwartz fashion, like breaks down the sentences and why certain words need to be in certain places and why the certain types of words need to be there, why they need to be visual words that create a picture in your mind. Like, it's just a fascinating, even if you know it, to actually go through and how he deconstructs it, only like he can do, in a workbook form is just fascinating.
You know, you said something really important there, because I am not a believer that you can know it.
Yeah.
This room is evidence of that. Your rooms are evidence of that, because if you could, it's sort of like I took a bath, so I'm clean for the rest of my life. Or I lifted a weight, so I'm healthy now. That's why my own book is tagged with all these little things in it, because I reference it. It's like the 12 most persuasive words in advertising from that Yale study. What are they? There's only 12, but I forget some of them. I like to have them out in front. And all the things that I've been trained on personally in the direct response copywriting. And I've written multi-million-dollar productions, front-end pieces that did wildly successful. I've written back-end pieces. I've written fulfillment pieces. I've written all these things. And those deconstructions you're talking about were painful. And we had access to those things at the time. You found one. I don't have that. I had it. And now that it's not with me, I don't have it, if you know what I mean.
Right.
You gotta keep it poured into your head. And I remember legal reviews of the full page advertorials. We had 4 attorneys on staff. Those legal reviews solidly last 3 hours, no problem. Many would go beyond that. And they would literally question every word. And I'm like, and sentence proximity to each other. How soon is the claim? Where is the substantiation? We would end up with binders like this thick, or where's my camera? That thick on just what are the sources for every claim you're making. Because what I found out later, I was irritated at first when I first started to go through those, but what I found out later is they're just building their case. How defensible is this ad? Because we were in newspapers in every market. We were everywhere. Regulators would call us. We'd get letters from attorneys general. We had the case built though, because we did all that pre-work. So
I mean, I wrote for Agora for a while, so I went through that same process, and that was like, you spend 6 to 8 weeks writing the copy, and then you spend another week with the legal team going back and forth. It was crazy. And even when you thought you were prepared, like you said, they question every word. It could be the same word, but in different parts of the thing, it meant different. Like it had different weight, right? If it's in the headline, it's totally different than if it's buried way down on the summary page or whatever, right? So
back to the words themselves, because I'm so hooked on that. Words and questions. There's so much depth there. Like Trey Gowdy's new book, one of the things he does is says words have different meanings.
Yes.
And that can absolutely trip you up.
Yeah, I do this experiment with my coaching clients, usually in the first couple calls, just like pure life coaching stuff. And I'll say, okay, I'm going to say a word, and I want you to tell me what comes to mind. And I'm not going to give you any hints. It's just going to be a random word that comes out, but I want you to describe the entire scene that comes up for you. And they're like, and I'm, you got it? Yeah, I got it. All right, let's okay. So make sure all the rules are clear. And then I use a word like fire.
Yeah.
And, it's amazing. Like, it could be anything from my house burned down when I was a kid to a campfire with my dad, and we went camping every weekend, to, a lighter at a concert, just that one word has so many scenes with it. And if you're not aware of that when you're writing copy, and you don't know your avatar, you could throw a word in there that you think is pretty harmless that could destroy everything. And it's just so fascinating that how much power each of those words have.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody that lives in California right now, you mentioned fire.
Yeah.
It's probably not a good word to use.
Yeah, it's not a warm and fuzzy feeling. No.
They can see it on the horizon. It's not a campfire. It's a destructive.
That's right.
burn.
Yeah. So if you say this product is, like fire, or, some like slang like that, that's going to, even if they intellectually could understand what you're saying, like emotionally, it's going to pull up something you don't want pulled up.
Right.
And you have to be aware of that, or else it's just, you either have to frame it and say campfire, or be more, put the adjectives around it that make it work.
Right.
But you can't just leave it out there. So, and that's what Schwartz's book, The Brilliance Breakthrough, kind of goes through over and over. All right. So I got to know, we've been doing this a lot lately, Jonathan. We've been getting such good guests that our shows have been going long. We're heading towards the Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss model.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
3 hours with no break. Yeah.
Yeah. Just keep going. So do you have any other questions? I got one question from the book, but
I was about to get into the film.
Okay. So before we go to the film real quick, like if you could only give one takeaway from the book for most people, what would it be? Like the one $10,000 trick or 20,000 with inflation?
That's tough because there would probably be two, but
well, you can do one main one and we'll give the second as a bonus. How about that?
There's a section in the book about victim virus.
Okay.
And that's kind of a favorite of mine because I think everybody, and I'm slicing on my language as I say it because I don't even like my own answer, but the victim virus.
Great phrase, by the way.
It's about blame. It's about blaming others for your circumstance. It's about blaming others for the way you feel. It's about blaming others for why things didn't work out. When in all reality, you need to turn all of that inside, accept responsibility, because the only thing that matters is what you let in your own head. It's sort of like what Jim Rohn said, stand guard at the door of your mind. You can't let things in unless you agree to let things in. So there's so much in that victim virus section in that book that I think could expand into a huge lesson for everybody. That's a favorite of mine. Okay. Second would be the steps to use story covertly. Stories bypass all your critical faculties. When I tell you a story, you're not dissecting it. You're listening to the story. Right. That's why movies are just suspension of disbelief. Go in, Pinocchio is a puppet. This is ridiculous, but you're going to just go along with it.
Right.
And somebody, whispers over to you that, hey, this is crazy. I'm watching the movie. So all of these things, there's definite steps and techniques to build a persuasive story. And stories by themselves, like I love Aaron Sorkin's writing. He wrote The West Wing. He wrote Sports Night. He wrote Molly's Game. He's an incredibly talented writer. He says the only things that he says, I'll give you the lesson of writing in like a sentence. I'm like, oh, what is this? He's like, it's intention, obstacle, emotion. Your character has to have an intention. It has to be an obstacle that is almost absolutely going to stop that character. And then it has to be mixed with emotion. Now there's lots of sub rules in that and how to do it.
Yeah.
And my book, as old as it is, it's got some really good tips and techniques on constructing a persuasive story. How do you do it? And that I think would probably be a good takeaway. Learn how to tell a persuasive story. It will matter. And it will be so easy.
Yeah. And especially as we get, like you said, as we get virtual, and that's, we've hit a threshold where we're always going to be more virtual than we were pre-COVID. Like it's going to happen. Yeah. And being able to tell those stories to kind of get meetings going or to get presentations going or somewhere in there to keep the attention like that. I think that's going to be more, it's always been important, but because you don't have that, it's so much easier for people to tune out on Zoom and be doing something else.
Oh yeah.
Right. There's stuff going on around you. There's, like I've got 3 screens here. Like I could be looking at who knows what, like, where if you're in an audience in a boardroom, it's a little bit harder to do, to fake it.
And I think it's one of those things that helps replace some of the missing part, right?
Right.
Because a story will connect people to people.
Yes.
When I tell you a story about when I was little and I was selecting between two toys, you were there in your own memory thinking when you were little. I mean, it just happens. I didn't even have to tell you to do that. I'm persuading, well, if I had a goal, if I had an outcome based
for that story, yeah.
Yeah. So the stories are critical. And I think now more than ever, I think you're exactly right with this Zoom environment, which probably is never going to go completely away. It's going to be more important than ever. And stories, by the way, can be really short. It can be one sentence.
Yeah.
So
yeah, one of my favorite sites is, and I use when I teach copy cubs and stuff, or is the 6-word stories site to show just how much you can pack in a sentence if you really want to.
Yeah.
You know, so Jonathan, let's switch gears a little bit, and you've got some other stuff going on, Jim, besides the book you wrote 15 years ago. You're still actively doing stuff.
Yeah.
So Jonathan, I'll let you lead that.
Yeah, so I want to talk about this Bleeding Blue, the film. I haven't had a chance to watch it, but tell us a little bit about some of the background for our listeners, if you would share a little bit about the background on that, and how I guess persuasion was used in that particular. Was this like a documentary type?
Yeah, it is kind of it's definitely in the documentary category, and it's my involvement in it is a very tiny slice.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that it's in there is because Kenny Latimer, who is the producer of that movie, I've worked with Kenny for a number of years. He's got his own company. He does incredible projects, incredible video work. He knows how to put a story together. He came up with this concept with a bunch of other people, and I'm going to leave some names out, and I apologize for that because, again, my slice is right here. But anyway, the Bleeding Blue concept, it's very relevant right now. It's about police. I don't know if you saw the trailer for it or anything, but
yeah, I watched the trailer.
I'm going to spoil the movie's out, so I'm not going to spoil any endings for anybody, but I am going to spoil the ending for you. So what happens is it's about what you think might be police brutality. You might think it's police acting badly, when in reality, what it turns out to be is how good and valuable police really are, how misunderstood some things are. It tells a story that has an absolute twist at the end. You'll be surprised. I won't give that away. You'll be surprised. Definitely worth watching. Kenny came to my office a while ago when this was first coming out, and he said, "Hey, take a look at this." And I go, "Oh, Phoenix Film Festival. You guys are going to be at the Phoenix Film Festival." And oh, look, you're giving an interview. And he goes, "Yeah, I'm not going." And I go, "Well, why not?" He goes, "I got vacation planned that day." He goes, "We're not going to win." Fast forward, they won. Phoenix Film Festival, best documentary. They won that. Fox News has become involved. They have a bunch of personalities that have been in various involvement with it. Promotions are kicking up even more now, even though the movie's out, just because it's so topical.
Yeah,
they're getting more funding, more releases, more. It's just gained some speed. All of that being said, Kenny came to me in its filming days and said, all about this persuasion thing. You know a lot about that. And I said, I know a fair amount. And he goes, why? Talk to me. And it was just him and I talking to my office. He goes, talk to me about how you think the media persuades the public. We talked for probably 3 hours.
Yeah, I was going to say that could go a while.
We were pulling up examples on our phones and saying, take a look at this. And one of the greatest examples, I mean, I won't give a specific one. You can see what I mean by saying this. Let's say something happens. And it's back to my drawing of the 2 stick figures and the X in the middle. A news event happens. Just bounce through CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. The same story, almost the same video, but different headlines. They will treat it completely different.
Yeah.
Well, so we talked about why is that and what is their power to persuade? How do they do it? And so finally, he's 3 hours ends. He comes back in with film equipment and stuff and says, let's go through that again.
Right.
I'm like, okay. So really, we went at least 2 hours on film. It was crazy. We just talked about everything.
Sure.
It comes down to when you see the film, if you ever do, it's just like anything else, right? A bunch leaves laying on the cutting room floor in the old days, but now digital. But it's probably just a couple of minutes. It's probably just a couple of minutes. And it talks about how exactly, it kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier in this interview, which is news stories well, they're sensationalized, first of all. They want to get you to look. They want to get you to click. They want to get you to pay attention. Once they have your attention, they're going to feed a narrative. And they're going to get the people who already agree with them to agree with them even more and stir it up. And they can make a small thing look extremely big on that screen. So and his graphics in there about what I'm saying, that he overlays the graphics, puts the film video together. It's just definitely worth seeing. The movie has a great message. I was proud to be a part of it. And that's how that came about.
So where's it? Is it just online? Is it in theaters? I know there's not many theaters open yet, but.
Right. And that's a problem. It's in very limited release pre-COVID. And then this all happened. So I think it's available online. I think.
Is it on Netflix, or do you know?
I'm not sure. I'd have to check that out. It may be by now. But it's, I think, bleedingbluemovie.com.
Okay. Yeah, I did watch the trailer, so I'll see if it says where else. But
find it.
Yeah, it's very timely for sure.
It sure is. But yeah, Kenny's just an incredible, storyteller when it comes down to it. If you look at that and deconstruct how it was put together, like where he's going here, and here, telling the story. I'm telling you what, stories are so persuasive. It's so persuasive. Even news stories are little mini stories, and
and
sucked into it.
Yeah, I do this with my wife all the time. I was, because I'm the copywriter, she's not. And something you said earlier, I was going to comment on, like, copy and persuasion is like a second language, right? You learn it, but to stay proficient at it, you have to continue to use it, and you have to use it in context of where other people are fluent, like the marketplace, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to learn Spanish, but if you don't speak Spanish in Mexico or Spain or wherever, it ain't the same thing.
It falls apart. When it's the old use it or lose it, right? I mean, that's a great example. And just recently, I've known Jay Abraham for a long time. I don't know if you guys know him, but I did a full page advertorial in USA Today for him, just freelance on my own, because I definitely want to. I have those skills. I keep them up because I do one-off projects like that for people who can appreciate it.
Right.
And you mentioned in the Agora days, it would take like 6 weeks to write something. So few people understand that it takes 6 weeks to write something. They're like, they give you the assignment, like somebody who doesn't know, or a relative or something. Well, what are you working on? You're going to say the same thing. 2 weeks later, what are you working on? You're going to say the same thing. Aren't you done yet? It's definitely a process, because you're constructing your story, you're building your case. And those, I did a 2-page spread in USA Today for Jay that had Damon John and Tony Robbins in it. And the word count in that alone was crazy.
Yeah.
But I enjoy doing that, and whatever the format, whether it's direct mail or newspaper or online ads, because it doesn't matter. It does not matter what the media is. It doesn't matter, because what you're doing is you're using human psychology to persuade somebody else to do something, and it's that simple. And I love that topic, and that's why I have this crazy room.
Yeah, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Like you see it everywhere. Like I was going to say, with my wife, I point out like the actual words they use in their headlines, in their opening dialogues. Like, they use these very strong, visceral type words in their monologues, and it's different. Like you said, if you're on CNN, MSNBC, or Fox, and it's just crazy to watch how blatant it is. It's just right there, but nobody sees it. Like it's like you said, it's covert if you don't understand it.
Exactly right, and so much is covert. It flies right under our ability to question. The people who are toughest to convince or persuade are us, you guys, me, people like us who can look at something and be a little bit objective and go, wait a minute, your radar's up. It's up all the time because you're looking for it. But if you're not looking for it, you're going to go, oh, that makes sense. Especially if it's in line with what you believe. That chapter early on, Jonathan, where you said changing beliefs.
Yeah.
It's hard to do.
Yeah.
But it's on the flip side of that, it can be shockingly easy to do if you know how to ask questions the right way, not in an accusatory or prosecutorial way. It's just you're kind of moving people on to the next thing. And then pretty soon they're so far down the road, they're realizing that, well, maybe there is something to that. You give them a new piece of information to cling on to, and then they're saving face at the same time. They're like, I didn't realize that. Well, now that I know that, and you've got them moving down the road. So there's so many different little things.
Have you ever watched, have you ever seen that movie? I caught part of it this past week, 10 Men. I mean, it's a movie from the 80s.
Oh yeah. Where they sell aluminum siding.
Yeah. So there's two companies out there selling aluminum siding. But there's one scene in the movie that makes me think about this, because it's like you talked about painting pictures and how people that they know a sales pitch when it's coming to them, but that, these guys, this one company, and it's got Danny DeVito and Richard Dreyfuss. So Richard Dreyfuss, they're making their sales pitch, and Sean, you've seen it. You remember this. They go to the one prospect's home, and they set up this camera in front of her home. So they're taking a picture, and she goes, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" And they say, "We're taking a picture of your home because we're part of, we're with like Time Magazine or someplace, some magazine like that." And they said, we're aluminum siding is a big thing. And what we want to do is take a picture of your house, because your house is going to be the before house. And then we're going to take a picture over here of the after house of a house that just got the aluminum siding. And she's like, "So my house is going to be the before?" So it's like, "Oh yeah. And it's fine. It's fine. We're just comparing the two." And she's like, "Well, I don't want to be the before, So it's like amazing how, awesome. They painted a picture of that, although it was kind of sleazy the way they did it.
Yeah.
But how they did it without selling.
For sure.
Yeah. They put that image in her mind. They planted that image.
Right.
Of her being the beforehand, and she didn't want to be that. And obviously after that, she went straight to her husband and said, we're buying aluminum siding. So
right. Yeah. That's a great example. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it does. You showed her the future of what could be.
Right.
Yep.
Without even saying it. Like,
that's right.
That's super covert there.
So
So
there's no high pressure there. There's no,
exactly.
No pricing was discussed. It's like, none of that mattered. And when you really want something, none of that stuff does matter.
That's right.
Yep.
So
Dan said that on the show last week. He was like, he was doing a package, and one of the guys at Agora for the healther, Dan just felt like he shouldn't put so much proof in it. It was just felt like it was more emotional plea. The guy was like, "Yeah, proof doesn't actually matter." And I think for the sale, that's true. I think for what you said earlier, for buyer's remorse, I think logic is important,
right?
And to be able to tell their friends and things like that.
But again, that's timing, right? Because they've already made the decision. That was the emotional decision first, justified with logic. All those attitudes became that way because there's an element of truth in those, because we do buy emotionally.
Yep, for sure. Well, Jim, we could probably talk for days. What else are you up to? What do you want to leave with the audience? Any projects you're on or places they can find more about you?
I only have like that very long running project of I'm really digging into the questions and ways to tell stories that bypass everyone's ability to find out what's going on. So there's those projects in the background. Those might take a while to become anything. So I don't know about that. Ways they can find out more about me. I do have a website. It's very old. It's not updated because now I'm in the corporate world and I'm very much behind the scenes. Like when I mentioned I work with Jay Abraham, I do, but I say I don't tell people that, but now I'm telling you. But anyway,
it's kind of like just email it. Hey, can you, because you've probably got a relationship that goes back.
Yeah, quite a ways. And if people want to reach out, they can definitely reach out. I have a very, very, I want to say little in the sense that it doesn't have a website. It's called National Copy Direct. And they can email me at jim@nationalcopydirect.com. And they would be able to send me a note, a question, anything, and they can go from there.
So do you? I know you're the VP of marketing with Patriot Software, and like I said at the beginning, I've heard their ads on XM radio a number of times, and they're very memorable because that little tune and everything. In fact, there's a number of times I've found myself like humming it, because it's like so catchy. But do you write are you involved in writing any of those ads or?
Those ads, no, because those ads were written and aired before I came to Patriot.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, but the thing is, I mean, in all the metrics that all of us would study about how effective a various campaign is, they did something interesting because they did so much on Sirius XM, and then they did an almost equal amount on terrestrial radio, and they wanted to find out which one performs better. Which one do you think performed better?
Well, since you're asking, I'm going to say it's terrestrial. Good old fashioned AM FM. John,
yeah, I would say XM because I haven't heard them lately. So maybe they decided to go.
Well, it's interesting because they were absolutely even. The results were so even that the spend was even, the results were even. It made no difference whether, and they're a national company, Patriot is, so it doesn't matter where the so they were completely even. The reason why you haven't heard them in a while, and that's actually true, is because just before COVID hit, the CEO of the company said, let's turn that down to 0 right now. And it was before that hit. What he wanted to find out was how long is the tail of people remembering? Because in the beginning of this call, I told you I had a background in radio. And so I said, I'll bet you it's like a train, right? You take the train engine away and the train coasts for a while. To this day, we haven't been on the radio in at least 6 months.
Yeah.
There was somebody on the Patriot site today that said, hey, just heard you on the radio. No, you didn't. But that's how people think.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the jingle?
Yeah. Yeah, I could hum it. I mean, it's easy.
Yeah. So that they are an incredibly technologically advanced company. They own all their own code. There's 150 employees. About 75% of them are all developers. And technology is just crazy. I mean, it's so far down the road that even though Patriot's small compared to the big guys who do payroll and accounting software like Intuit and QuickBooks, they're going to catch up quick. They're young. Yeah. They're doing things that nobody else is doing. Nobody. I mean, the advancements are daily. It's like Silicon Valley right here in Ohio. It's crazy. Yeah. So watch out for this company. It's going to be it's going to be a rocket.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yep.
All right. Well, Jim, it's been fun, man. We appreciate you coming on. Sean, this is another one. We'll have to split down the middle, but it's worth it. So it's been fun having you on, Jim. Yeah, appreciate you having discussion with us on your book. And we'll be posting a link. I mean, even though it's like 15 years, it's still worth it. It's like a go-to. It's like a classic. I would say it's like in top 5 books on persuasion outside of Cialdini. You're not too far behind Cialdini there with Covert Persuasion. And I would encourage anyone that's a big fan of influence or persuasion to go out and get a copy of Covert Persuasion for sure. So I appreciate you having on. We'll put a link on it. And thanks again.
Yeah, thanks very much. This was great. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right.